Star Citizen has been in development for 12 long years, and in all that time, we've only seen one star system, Stanton, 4 planets and 12 moons. And while 4.0 is just around the corner and set to bring a second system with Pyro, there's a huge problem staring us all in the face. How do you keep building an entire universe when one system still feels so damn empty? Stanton is massive, but let's be honest, it's more barren than my bank account after a CitizenCon weekend.
I've got nothing left! I've got nothing left!
There's just too little to do for the scale we've been sold. And now CIG is aiming even higher, targeting 5 full star systems for Star Citizen 1.0. But if one system already feels so sparse, how can they fill out 5? At this year's CitizenCon, CIG introduced a group of tools that just might be the solution, and it's easily the most underrated part of the entire weekend.
Guten Tag, CitizenCon!
These tools are set to tackle the content drought head-on, giving us a glimpse of how Star Citizen's universe could finally come to life. These tools are collectively named Genesis.
Genesis.
So, what makes Genesis different? It's not just another group of tools for crafting beautiful, high-fidelity environments. Genesis is aiming to be more than that, creating entire ecosystems and interactive environments that open the door to organic, emergent gameplay. And by the end of this video, I'll show you why Genesis might be the key to finally delivering the living, breathing universe we've been promised for over a decade now. One of the most interesting moments during the panel came when Ali Brown dropped a bombshell about their intention to add seasons.
Now, this isn't the only thing that will drive the color of the leaves. We're going to introduce the concept of seasons to the game. And this will mean our planets will evolve through the year, and we'll be able to shed leaves from trees and have the grass wither in winter.
With Benoit confirming that the planetary rotation systems are already in place, but waiting for more stability to be turned on, we might eventually see these rotations align for actual seasonal changes on planets and moons. Before that, though, it looks like seasons will run on a simple timer system. But why do seasons even matter for gameplay? Isn't it time to focus on filling these high-fidelity worlds with actual content, rather than just building them and making them look pretty? Well, here's where, in my opinion, Genesis gets really interesting. Imagine, if you will, seasons not just as visual changes, but as gameplay drivers, shaping resources, crafting, and economic fluctuations. Genesis takes procedural world building to a whole new level by generating cohesive microbiomes on a planetary scale, entirely driven by data variables. It determines what grows where based on factors like light, temperature, humidity, and soil composition, without needing constant developer input. For explorers, this could open up new dynamic incentives to scout planets and moons for valuable resources. Surveying terrain won't just be about gathering data, it'll mean finding the right conditions that could yield important resources and the right results. Traders and gatherers will be able to use this data to their advantage, giving more depth to Star Citizen's economy. Seasons could also create natural shifts in the game's economy, with resources peaking in availability during specific times of year, then declining as seasons change, which could lead to organic hotspots of player activity, driven by the ebb and flow of the planet's seasonal cycles. I'll be honest, seasons were never something I thought would make it to Star Citizen, but now I'm starting to see how they could really enhance dynamic gameplay and resource acquisition, making the verse feel more alive and purposeful, and requiring less developer man-hours to keep it all moving. But even with all of this, it's still not enough for me. Star Citizen's planets and moons need to be more than just massive resource nodes. Yes, space building and crafting will offer some additional planetary gameplay, but right now you can fly across entire planets for hours without finding anything meaningful to do. This is where Starchitect comes in.
I'd like to introduce to you Starchitect.
Yes, Starchitect. CIG's love for naming tools after stars continues, and it seems they're still building systems to solve one of the game's most elusive mysteries. Where the f*** is the content? Starchitect's mission to populate our vast empty worlds with something much more than just pretty landscapes or empty spaces. Using the same cohesive rule sets we just discussed for biomes, Starchitect will begin filling planets with unique, non-repetitive locations and points of interest, making use of CIG's library of pre-built modules and assets which we began to see years ago. The idea here is that structures will appear logically, where they make sense, like mining outposts near rich resource deposits or farms in biomes with the right soil and climate. Instead of scattered, disconnected locations, we should see clusters that serve a purpose, a distribution hub surrounded by forward operating bases, resource nodes and mining outposts, all procedurally generated based on factors like legality, resource types, environment, and proximity to other infrastructure. As a side note, CIG doesn't mention procedural at any point. Now, maybe you guys can tell me, but that's either because this isn't technically procedural, or CIG wanted to move away from the word in favor of the old faithful, emergent. And boy, does it show up a lot in this panel. When these clusters of structures are grouped together, they'll form what CIG is calling a sector, potentially hundreds of connected locations spread across a planetary surface. Starchitect is set to define these sectors with their own unique identities, all based on varying inputs like nearby resources, lawful or unlawful status, and geography. And from there, the plan is to tie this into the mission system. This not only means a bunch of new exploration opportunities across hundreds of locations, but more importantly, it provides players with actual content to engage with once they get there. Starchitect feels like the next logical step towards finally making that a reality, and with server meshing, Pyro, and other systems on the horizon, we could be seeing the effects of Starchitect sooner than we think. So what can we actually expect to encounter at these new locations? Like I said earlier, the keyword here is emergent. The panel leaned heavily on the idea that AI populations at these sites will create emergent, dynamic interactions for players based on more data variables. But it's one thing to promise emergence, and another to deliver actual engaging gameplay, especially when most current locations and AI feel static and predictable. Using data-driven inputs, interactions will change based on the NPCs present, the time of day, the biome, and even destructible cover in the environment. These rule sets will determine the kind of challenge you'll face, and I'm betting it'll influence loot as well. While a lot of these locations will be tied to repeatable contracts, I'm hoping that CIG gives us a reason to visit random flyover spots too. Maybe dynamic loot, rare resources, or valuable narrative opportunities that aren't tied to the standard kill 10 copian formula. For hostile areas, we need real variety in the AI's approach too. Enemy NPCs using ground vehicles, snipers, anti-air platforms, infantry with heavy weaponry, even AI dropships bringing reinforcements. These places should be worth scouting beforehand, requiring players to assess the risks and adapt their strategy. If CIG can nail that, then we're finally talking about real dynamic gameplay that rewards exploration and skillful planning, with the opportunity for interesting and challenging squad and org-based ops, to the likes of Arma and other milsim games. But wait, there's more! These aren't the only variables that Genesis will help dictate for planetary locations moving forward. It looks like weather is finally going to play a major role in planetary traversal and exploration. The last segment of the Genesis showcase introduced a real weather system capable of generating violent storms.
Now we start seeing the new cloud shading model come into play. We are seeing enhanced occlusion beneath the cover, emphasizing the sunbeams how it interact with the clouds, and seeing the light shafts peer through the layers. Now, as this is closing in, we can start to see the changes in visibility of the area. Light precipitation is starting. Previously, we authored static cloud shapes, but no longer. We didn't manually place a volume here. Its presence has been informed by Genesis data. Oh, and it's not just a cloud volume. It's a weather front.
Something I've personally been waiting to see for a long time, and just like the other aspects of the Genesis demo, this weather won't be some cosmetic afterthought. It's based on physically plausible conditions, creating real simulated weather fronts that could drastically change the way we navigate planets. This kind of unpredictability should add layers to planetary gameplay and finally give players a reason to use ground vehicles when necessary too. And if you know me, that is something I've been crying out for years. But I do hope these storms aren't too sudden or give players enough time to react if one does start brewing. Ships like the Terrapin and Carrack, designed to withstand harsh environments, would likely become essential for weathering these hazards. And we've already seen solar flares in Pyro, which give a warning with just enough time to react before they strike. So maybe we'll get similar alerts for incoming storms on other planets too. On stream, we discussed the possibility of storms introducing a whole new gameplay loop. Explorers, for example, could survey planets and create weather forecast data that they could sell or offer to other players. Without the data, you wouldn't get weather warnings, but with the right up-to-date information, maybe you could be covered for a week at a time. Make the data temporary, creating continued demand for planetary surveys from the exploration profession. I don't know, what do you guys think? I'm also cautious about storms and hyper-aware that Star Citizen needs to do better at respecting people's time in the game, which is already a gigantic problem. If these storms are as dangerous as they claim, they could add a lot of time to even the simplest activities if you're caught unprepared. Imagine getting caught in the middle of a storm with no cover or stuck in the wrong ship. I can already hear the community's frustration if what should have been a 5-minute job turns into a 1-hour ordeal because of the weather. Visually, storms appear to be easy to spot, so the right measures can be taken ahead of time, but I can't help but wonder, and I'll be devil's advocate here, is this one of those features that sounds incredible on paper, but after the first few storms, just ends up being another frustration in practice? For a panel that I didn't expect much from, Genesis turned out to be one of the most interesting. Over the next couple of years, we might be looking at a feature that finally delivers on the emergent, living universe Star Citizen has been teasing for over a decade. I'll be dropping more of my own CitizenCon breakdowns over the next few weeks, so if you enjoyed this one, you'll probably like the others too. Thank you so much to my Meaty members who help me continue to do what I do here, and thank you to all of you for watching. Goodbye.